Liz Truss gave an interview to Sky TV, specifically to Ed Conway on Trevor Phillips' show. And she was asked at the beginning whether or not she would apologise for the higher mortgages that so many people have suffered since her mini budget and since the way she praised Kwasi Kwarteng's prodigious package. And that package, of course, delivered disaster. What she says in this interview is it wasn't her fault. She questions the premise of what you're asking, Ed. That's one of her methods. What exactly is a premise in this particular case? I don't understand. I don't think she understands. She's appealing to some sort of philosophical trope, and that should have been drummed out of her when she was in Oxford. She talks about the deep resistance of the British economics establishment, and well, again, she was in control. She was in control of that, and towards the end of the interview, she moans about the difficult position that she was in, and she blames the Bank of England. She says, she's asked, did you speak to the Bank of England? Well, no, that was the Chancellor's responsibility, she says. Well, you're Prime Minister. Why didn't you overrule that? Why didn't you speak to him? Well, I wanted to, and the Cabinet Secretary advised me not to. Maybe I shouldn't have taken that advice. Her book is full of the advice she was given, the advice she didn't take. And some of the advice, of course, she judges to be bad advice, like presumably the Queen's advice. Oh, I wish I'd taken that. Pace yourself, dear. Well, as I think, have I got news for you? Put very well. The idea, pace yourself, dear, is what you say to your alcoholic uncle at Christmas, who's deciding to leave behind the bottle. There is a madness in Liz Truss. It's beautifully exposed in this interview. I'm going to play the interview, a good deal of it. So here we are.
Liz Truss, do you have an apology for the people whose mortgages went up so much during your time in office?
Well, I question the premise of what you're asking me, Ed, because the fact is mortgage rates have gone up across the world. The issues that I faced in office were issues of not being able to deliver the agenda I'd set out.
Liz Truss, do you have an apology for the people whose mortgages went up so much during your time in office?
Well, I question the premise of what you're asking me, Ed, because the fact is mortgage rates have gone up across the world. The issues that I faced in office were issues of not being able to deliver the agenda I'd set out because of a deep resistance within the British economic establishment. But I think it's wrong to suggest that I'm responsible for British people paying higher mortgages. That is something that has happened in every country in the free world. And as I said in the leadership election back in 2022, the reality was that interest rates have been too low for too long. And I think that's part of the cause of the economic problems that Britain is currently experiencing.
So even though mortgage rates did go up, you'd concede they went up very sharply during your time in office?
Well, they have gone up everywhere.
Yeah, but they went up.
There was a global rise. There was a global rise in mortgage rates, and I think it's disingenuous to say that was as a result of the policies I pursued. Now, we had a specific issue with the gilt market, but that issue was driven by the actions of the Bank of England. And what frustrates me, Ed, is the fact that journalists like you are not asking those difficult questions of the Bank of England of what they did in autumn 2022.
The reason I asked though is that so I was covering this at the time, and I kind of remember looking at all of these charts and trying to conceding that the Bank of England was a part of this, but for instance rates, while the Bank of England was moving towards tightening interest rates, quantitative easing, they were kind of going up a bit, and then suddenly they went through the roof directly after the mini budget. So there is pretty much kind of clear cause and effect there.
Ed, exactly at the same time, that was when the governor of the Bank of England announced that he was selling £40 billion of government gilts.
Well, it's not quite the
And
same
that's-
time. It wasn't quite the same time.
It is
That was
exactly
that
the
was
same
that was
time.
one day, and then the next day came the mini budget.
It
and
is
then,
exactly the same
but
time.
day by these charts are day by day, and day by day you can see not much going on, and then the mini budget happens. This is, for instance, the cost of insuring the UK against default, and then suddenly up goes that cost. So the UK becomes a scarier place for investors straight after the mini budget. This is day by day.
But you're not talking about the actions of the Governor of the Bank of England. The
I'm
Governor of the
I'm talking
Bank of
about your
England.
actions.
Well, but what I'm saying is that the specific issues that caused the difficulties in the market were largely as a result of decisions made by the Governor of the Bank of England. And I explain this in my book, 10 Years to Save the West. And I think it's important for Sky viewers to read the book and see my explanation of what happened.
Okay, but I've just...
And I do think it's a problem when elected politicians are held responsible for decisions they don't have any ability to influence. And that is what has frustrated me about this situation. I'm not saying that I got everything absolutely perfect in the way the policy was communicated, but what I am saying is I faced real resistance and actions by the Bank of England that undermined my policy and created the problems in the market. And what I'm also saying, Ed, which I don't think has been fairly reported, is that interest rates went up, in the United States, they went up in continental Europe. And I don't think it does any service to the British public to not tell the truth about why that happened and the fact that we've had failed policy for a number of years, which is the responsibility of the Bank of England.
Okay, so you clearly there were some issues with the Bank of England governor, and you lay them out in your book.
But Ed,
talk
have
about
you
that.
ever questioned the Bank of England governor on these issues?
Yeah, we have. I mean, but that's what I was doing at the time. Why we were asking questions about the bank, about its monetary policy, about why it hadn't necessarily done some of the scrutiny that it could have done on what happens when interest rates go higher.
What about the LDI crisis?
Well,
and their failure to properly regulate LDIs.
Yeah, I know. We were covering that kind of through the time, day by day. So I remember it kind of quite vividly. I suppose my question to you is, you had all these problems with the Bank of England governor, and you talk about it, in depth in your book. He's in a sense, if there's any kind of villain in it, that's the Bank of England governor, Andrew Bailey. Simple question: there you are in office. He's causing all this trouble for you. What did you do about it? Did you call him up and say this is problematic? Did you call him in and say, listen, we need to change this?
It was a difficult situation because the Bank of England governor deals with the Chancellor of the Exchequer rather than a Prime Minister.
Yes, but you are the Prime
What
Minister.
What I didn't want
does
to
meet
do,
the Bank of England governor.
What I didn't want to do was undermine the Chancellor in him trying to sort out the situation.
So did you meet Andrew Bailey?
No, I didn't.
You did.
And
you didn't.
I actually had a meeting set up and I wanted to meet him, but I was advised that would be a bad idea. And perhaps I shouldn't have taken that advice, but that advice came from the Cabinet Secretary. And what I didn't want to do is further exacerbate the problems because
So you're blaming the Bank of England governor, and then you're saying you didn't meet him, but now you're blaming the Cabinet Secretary for why you didn't meet him?
I'm being honest here. I'm saying maybe I shouldn't have listened to that advice at the time. But what I was very, very concerned about is the country was in a serious situation. I didn't want to exacerbate that situation by making it worse. So I was in a difficult position. I'd been blindsided by the problems in the LDI market, which was essentially a financial tinderbox. I didn't want to make the situation any worse, even though, as I've said, I don't believe the mini budget was the main cause of the problems. So, I had to be responsible as Prime Minister and not create something that could have resulted in the country not being able to fund its own debts. That's what I was thinking about at the time. And, what you're saying in retrospect, yes, I probably should have spoken directly to the Governor of the Bank of England at the time.
This is the man you
if
say
I'd
brought you
known-
down, essentially.
Well, if I'd known, and I make a general critique of the system. So, yes, I'm not happy about what he personally did, but I think we've got a broader problem of democratic accountability and the fact that monetary policy is now pretty divorced from elected politicians. So I think it's a system problem as much as it is, I'm critical of particular individuals who acted the way they did.
Okay.
And what the book is about is not trying to reinstate myself as Prime Minister. It's trying to
Would you
explain...
like that, though?
No.
Definitely not.
I am not.
Tried that. Did it again.
What I want to do here is explain to people what happened and try and explain some of the problems that are developed in the British system that make it very, very difficult for democratically elected politicians to actually deliver the policy they were mandated to deliver. So
it's the fault, as you see, of the Bank of England in autumn 2022. And it's got nothing to do with Liz Truss. Nothing is Liz Truss's fault. And is she going to come back to be in number 10? No, certainly not. But might she end up being the leader of the Conservative Party while it's in opposition? I think she's got her eye on that prize. And the longer she keeps repeating that she's not to blame, the more stupid people are going to believe her, aren't they? And they might end up electing her, won't they? That's a disaster.